shifts, which is causing overtime.
Just for curiosity,
Yeah.
for every hour at an incident, we'll say a felony arrest, how many hours of paperwork is that after shift?
Well, that's kind of a broad question. I mean, it depends on the type of call that we're talking about. If it's something that requires an investigation, the arrest itself is just an allegation that we believe you've committed a crime, and now we've got to go back and put together.
I guess, I mean, the responding officer would have like an incident report after shift, I would imagine.
Yeah, once that person's taken to jail, at some point later, they've got to complete an offense form, and then start working on putting the case together. So it could be anywhere, depending on what type of case we're talking about. It could be anywhere from a few hours to months.
It gets extensive.
Absolutely.
Is the point.
Yep.
Okay.
Just an example, we had a lottery case in Elk Run that Sergeant Newman is still working to some degree with the FBI and whatnot, and he has literally spent months on that case. So, yeah.
I hate to do this to you,
Yeah,
but I had not started the recording. So would you mind repeating the statistics? I'm just going to state that we are having a special budget meeting on January 14th, just starting our expenditures with the police department.
Okay. So you just want the
Just
stats that I kind of read off
Your
there?
statistics,
Okay,
please, yeah.
sure. Going back over approximate figures, calls for 2022, 23, and 24. 22 was 4,100 calls, 23 was 4,700 calls, and 24 was 5,000 calls. Citations issued for the 3 years, 2022 was 450 citations, 23 was 880 citations, and 24 was 920 citations. Arrests, there was over 400 arrests in 2024, and that was up from 260 arrests in 2023. Felony arrests in 2023 were 28. In 2024, there were 44. Serious misdemeanors in 23 were 103. In 24, there were 188. And aggravated misdemeanors in 23 were 47, and in 24 there were 96. So as I mentioned, late calls, arrests, open shifts that we don't have part-timers covering, court time, all can add to our overtime bottom line. I know that some funds in the previous year, funds had been moved from the overtime budget to the part-time budget. And it would obviously be beneficial to move those funds back to the overtime budget. Our need for part-timers, we definitely have a need for part-timers, but I guess as it relates to part-timers, we only have a handful of part-timers, and you can't make them work. We appreciate our part-timers and they help us out, but as much as I'd like to make them work, every time I call them, I can't make them. And so that leaves us with nothing left but to offer it up to somebody else. So the other contributor to our overtime is training. There's certainly training that the state requires us to have and that we absolutely would want to have and need to have. If our officers were involved in something serious like an officer involved shooting or something of that nature, one of the first things they're going to want to ask about is the level of training that officer has received. So it's paramount that the officers receive regular training. We do our best to try to schedule training like that during shifts, you know, moving people around and whatnot to try to get that training during their work week. But we can't always do that. So there again, we end up with some overtime sometimes. So just to try to give you a little explanation of why things end up the way they do, and one of the things that I think we could do to help bring that back into focus with that line item from the part-timers. Like I said, I've got some folks here from police department to talk about some different wants versus needs for the department. We'd like to discuss a little bit about some interest in adding a new officer, a new position to our department. There's a grant out there. It's called the COPS grant. That's available for law enforcement. And this grant, there's a lot to it, but in a nutshell, this grant offers up to 80% reimbursement for expenses for a new officer. I guess in my view, I think that's a small investment on our part to bring on a new officer, with the funds that would be reimbursed to the city to bring that to add that position. Would also help us reduce overtime and minimize our need for that part-time help.
Chief,
Yeah,
how many years would that cover, that
I
grant?
think it's 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's
4?
I think it's 4 years.
Okay.
At
4 or 5.
80%? At 80%?
Maybe 4.5.
And so it essentially covers
Yeah.
80% of the wages for that employee, is that what you mean?
That's my understanding is training, wages, and insurance, I think. There's a lot involved in the grant. There's a lot of commitment to the grant.
Yeah.
And I've got that here if you're interested in looking at it. You can,
Is there commitment both ways?
What
So
do you mean?
is the officer in mind, would they be bound to us for a certain amount of time?
that's a good question. I'm certain we could work that out.
We could do an agreement. We've done those in the
Yeah,
I
past.
think if we were to go ahead, I think that'd be the only way that I'd be
Yep, just
okay with it.
Just for note, the officer's not with us anymore, but Officer Dave Sorovi, he's since retired. He was with us for a number of years. That's actually how he was hired on to the department, so.
I will say at a high level, I did just get a quick look at that PowerPoint this afternoon. And as much as Chief has stated, you know, it adds an extra officer, you know, and there's some benefits and it's being paid for, the program itself has its own benefits and its own values. So not to belittle what it is, but it's, you know, violent crimes apprehension and prevention programs and things that the mayor and I talked quite extensively this afternoon of just, we've seen an upward trend. Do we know why? In just calls for service. Do we know why? And if we do know why, are there preventable ones? Are there ones that can be done through education, through outreach, through how do we help bring it back? Because some people are just naturally evil. There is evil in this world, so they're gonna do bad things. But I think some people then, a lot of them in the middle, just may make a bad choice. So are there things out there to help steer them back maybe or whatnot, rather than just continue to throw them in jail? So this was one of the programs that the mayor pulled out, and I was quite interested in, even before I learned of any additional officer piece, but it's just like, hey, that's a great start, so.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could use the position. I think it could help us reduce our overtime and our dependency on part-timers. We have a need. You know, every one of these officers, when they take a case, they become their own investigator. You know, a lot of other agencies have investigator positions where once I take that initial report, I can pass that on to an investigator and they will do the follow-up. I know it's important. It's important to the community to see us out there driving around and be visible and doing traffic stops and whatnot. And I've said this before, you know, if you see an officer out there driving around, not that it's not important, but as it relates to the totem pole of what's important in our daily work, that officer's out driving around because he doesn't have anything else to do right now. He doesn't have a case to go investigate. So if we were to have somebody that could do, you know, strictly investigations, or even on a part-time basis in investigations, that would certainly be a tremendous help, so. And help get these officers from out behind their desks and out on the streets, so. One of the things we, are interested in, are gonna have a need for, is body cameras. I know it seems like we just talked about body cameras, at least to me it does. But our body cameras, the body worn cameras are, the warranty on those are now expired. The warranty on the car cameras will be expired in May. And, we won't be able to even re-up a warrant. In the past, they'd offered the opportunity to buy another warranty for another year or so. That's not even gonna be an option at this point, cause they're going to new equipment, you know, more, technology's growing and whatnot, so. I think a lot of these companies are going to, you know, cloud-based, companies, and, WatchGuard's no different. Their direct competition is a company called Axon, and that's virtually what every agency in the area is using now. They've really kind of got the market cornered. They've got a great package that works well for law enforcement, and WatchGuard is trying to keep up with them, I think, in some degree. So the price is going up as well. We do potentially have a option to, the sheriff's office is gonna be going to Axon also. Cedar Falls Police Department went to Axon, and they gave all of their WatchGuard equipment to the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office is now gonna be going to Axon, so now they've got all this WatchGuard equipment. We do potentially have the option to obtain that equipment from them, I think for little or no cost. For little or no cost, and we could use that equipment coupled with our equipment to buy us another year until we wanna make a decision on what we're gonna do with body cams. I know Axon, and again, I recognize that these companies, it costs a lot of money for this equipment, but, one of the deals that Axon offers is, you can spread that cost out over 5 years, make payments on it, so.
And Chief,
Yeah.
as I understand on the cameras too, it isn't just the warranty's ending to where, okay, we would be on the hook just for replacement parts. It sounded like they were going into life and
Yeah, I
replacement
don't think,
parts
yep,
are just
exactly.
done.
Yep, once that camera's done, I think it's done.
So, yeah, to me, it was worse than it was just, okay, like a car. My extended warranty's up, I'll just have to pay out of pocket if there's a problem, but I can still get parts for a transmission or whatever. My understanding is, yeah, that was
That's
nothing
not even
left.
an option.
So it's no longer being supported.
Into life,
Yeah.
yep, true into life. And so it'd be third-party market, eBay's, the sheriff's office.
Yeah, so we're gonna be forced to make a decision if we go the route with the sheriff's office, which is a great opportunity, I think, if we wanna push it out a year. But we're gonna have to make a decision, so. There's talk about vehicles. I had floated the idea to the mayor of not getting a vehicle this year. Only for the purpose of helping out the budget if it needed to be. Sure, we'd like to get a new vehicle if we can, and if you folks think that that's the right way to go, by all means, I agree. But, like I said, I had floated that idea if we wanted to try to go another year without a vehicle just for the sake of the budget, that was something I did throw out. During that conversation, the mayor and I, talked a little bit about the idea of getting rid of, both 19 and 13. 13's the Tahoe. If we were to go down to get rid of the two vehicles, I think, you know, the downside to that would be, you know, you're spreading out, the need probably for more maintenance across the other vehicles that we have because they're gonna be driven more. And I guess then the question becomes, would we stay at 4 vehicles at that point. Would we ever try to get back to 5 vehicles, or, what's the thinking there, I guess? And then I've got a couple guys here, they're gonna talk about firearms, and, the viewpoint, that's now kind of, gone across the board with all law enforcement as far as, transitioning from 40 caliber handguns to 9mm handguns, and I'm gonna let them talk more about that, but, they've got kind of more of the information on it to help you understand, cause I don't have that information. And then lastly, we were, thinking about the possibility of doing some landscaping around the building, or on our side of the building at least, so. Anybody wanna jump in? All right, we'll let these guys talk to you a little bit about firearms.
And while they're transitioning
Any,
this,
any questions?
I'm sorry,
for me?
Chief, go ahead.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate the info.
Thanks, Chief.
And just for my fellow counselors, the thing I looked at from the overtime piece, and this just helped put it in a little better perspective for me, just one, anywhere, any business, overtime is always something to try to keep to a minimum. It's just extra dollars spent. Like you said, holidays are one thing that just, they're there. They're not getting around that. But the first thing I looked at was, can we hire somebody that's gonna save us money on overtime? The clear answer is no. I can't hire a body for $15,000. And then 2, I was just curious and did a little research, again, very vague bulk number, but what's average overtime for police departments in America? It ranges anywhere from 5 to 15% in their budgets. Again, very vague numbers, I don't have specifics, but that was kind of the Google research terms that I got back. I ran the math on ours, and it's only 2.4%. So just putting what's proposed asked to their budget, their dollars spent in salary for their overtime, we were less than what most departments seem to sit in between 5 and 15. In fact, we were, half of as much again. So just, again, it's always money that we want to keep our eye on anything, but as far as getting the work done and truly seeing that as is that an inflated expense that we need to really clip, I was a little lighter on it. My attitude was just because 2.4% of their salary budget wasn't as huge of a heartburn for me, as long as it was kept in check. So,
That's good information.
but that's what I
Yeah.
just had done.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Hello, guys.
sorry, Jordan.
No, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Jordan Wamichel. This is Jeremy Furman. Chief Dean had talked briefly about what we were proposing to you guys tonight. Both of us had the opportunity to go down to Des Moines and go to firearms instructor school. I told Officer Furman, as well as the other officers, that I think this is the best training that I've been to personally, just being a police officer. Throughout this training, it was roughly about 48 hours, so it was 5 days. We shot about 3,000 rounds combined. Just to get into the school, we showed up the first day, kind of got a safety brief on what was expected of us throughout the week, and then we went right down to the range. So within the first hour and a half, I'd say, we were already down at the range shooting. We had to shoot a 50-round course. You could only drop 4 bullets. You got 2 tries, and if you didn't pass in those first 2 tries, they sent you home. So it was very intense.
Wow.
I don't know if there's quite another training besides DRE school. I think they'll send you home, right? That's like it. So you also have to qualify getting out as well. So throughout that training, on the last day, you have to do another qual course. Same thing, 50 rounds. You can only drop 4. You get 2 chances. The second time, or when you're qualing out, the target shrinks. So tougher. But nonetheless, this training, it was very eye-opening. Basically, it gives us the ability to qualify our officers each year, but it was very important. The master instructor, the guy leading the training, explained to us that's not the reason why you're here. The reason why you're here is to put your people in the best position to win the fight, if that ever happens. So, there's a level of, this is important stuff that we're dealing with. So it kind of opened our eyes a little bit to this. Throughout this training, we realized that we were one of the only departments there still using 40 calibers. I think there was one other department. Yep. We were the only department there that did not have lights on their guns. The trend has now been going, and we'll go over this throughout this presentation, but the trend is going to getting RDSs. They're like optics for a handgun, so it'd be like a red dot sight. A lot of departments already had those, as well as the lights on the guns. We were the only department that had neither. So, brief background. So there was a big push to move to 40 caliber guns. That was because at one point in time, 9mm just weren't getting it done. They weren't stopping the bad guys. Now with current technology and bullets, where they're at currently, the 9mm does exactly what the 40 does, and it's better. And Officer Furman's going to go into detail why that is. So I'll let you take over there. Oh, before I do that, I do want to hand out a quick handout for everybody here. You just want to pass those around for me? So there's quite a bit of information on these, and you guys can just flip through this at your leisure. But some of the main things that I wanted to go over, wait till you guys get yours. So a couple things that I highlighted. The 9mm offers the same projectile under identical testing conditions, is outperforming the premium line 40 Smith & Wesson. So again, that's that bullet is doing exactly what the 40 was doing and almost doing it better. The 9mm offer a higher magazine capacity, less recoil, lower cost in ammunition, and wear on the weapon, which Officer Furman will also go into greater detail on that. But that's some of the perks of having the 9mm opposed from the 40 caliber. The majority of FBI shooters are both faster in shot strings, so getting more rounds off, and more accurate, which is very important. Statistically speaking, in officer-involved shooting, you're not going to come up on target and get one shot off and then say, look and see, oh, did I hit him? And then come back up and, it's very fast. So you're coming out of your holster, you're coming up on target, and you're firing off multiple rounds quickly. So the ability to be able to put those rounds where you want to fast, you have a better, higher likelihood of doing that with a 9mm opposed from a 40 caliber. So.
Good evening. Like I said, I'm Jeremy Furman. I work third shift here. I'm just going to go over a couple of things with the guns. Jordan and I had sat down with Chief Dean, and we had proposed to switch from the 40 caliber to the 9mm. Jordan had already gone over a couple of those already. I just want to go over a couple more things. The cost per round is going to be significantly less. Did you have that sheet where we had the prices on? There we go. So with the 40 calibers that we're paying now, just for the practice rounds, this isn't what we carry for duty. This is just a practice round. They are the cheaper of the two between practice and duty. We're spending about $900 per case, and that's 1,000 rounds. If we just were to switch to 9mm, we'd be paying around $662. So it's a significant change in savings just for the practice rounds. It's not the main reason why we want to do it. There are also other reasons that I think are more important, which Officer Womacher went over. The recoil is a lot less. So you can obviously tell there are different sizes of people here, different hand sizes. Shooting a 9mm as opposed to shooting a 40 caliber, there is a significant difference. You can feel the recoil on the 40 a lot less on the 9, which then gives you more time to get back on target, which is a huge thing for us, less liability for the city. We are responsible for every bullet that comes out of our gun, no matter if we hit the target or not. And we feel, Jordan and I feel, that going to 9s greatly increases our chance of getting back on target quickly when we have to get multiple shots off. So the cost thing is a thing. The recoil, the new guns that we are looking at, they have different hand grips for different size people. People like me with a smaller hand, you can feel it. It fits good in the hand. They also have extensions for those with larger hands, so they don't feel like they're grabbing onto some tiny little thing. It actually fits good in their hand. We don't have that option right now with the guns that we currently carry. If for whatever reason you guys decide that this isn't the proper time for it, we still would like to get new updated guns in the 40. These guns are out in the elements, they're out in the weather, the snow, the dirt. We do take care of them, it's not like we don't, but they do get used. These guns need to be 100% reliable every time. Now, I'm not saying that they're not. You can take this gun and, if we ended up buying them off the department, they will work. Chances are, though, that parts do wear out. The 40 caliber does take a lot more wallop to the gun itself, so those parts wear out. Right now, I believe the trend is about 8 years, and departments are getting new guns. Our last guns were 2012. So we are significantly over that current trend. So that's another reason why we're here for that. Along with those guns, we would like to get weapon-mounted lights. Jordan and I have personally been in situations where you're chasing after a guy with your gun out and a light, and now how do you key up? How do you get on the radio to tell your partner and dispatch and everybody else in the county who is flooding towards your direction where you're at? You're either giving up your light or you're giving up your gun to key up. A weapon-mounted light eliminates that part. So you can still have your gun out, you can still have your light out, and you can still key up. We'd also like to transition to red dot sights, like Jordan had said earlier. I have a handout as well of, this is just something that I'd found off the FEI website, is 6 key reasons why red dot sights are more the trend to go to. As technology changes, everything changes, These guys, I remember hearing stories about how they used to do their reports on typewriters. Now we're doing stuff on computers. It's just the way things go. Technology advances, things get easier. You can read this at your leisure, but I do think that this handout that I'm showing you now, it does really kind of focus in on why a red dot sight is beneficial. And like I said, I'll let you go through that at your leisure. So that's kind of why we're looking for right now. We want to switch to a 9mm gun. It's going to be cheaper for rounds, easier to shoot, and then with the 2 accessories that we were looking for, we'll definitely put the officer in our opinion, the best possible solution to win the fight.
Officer Furman, have you or Officer Womachill gotten any pricing on what it would be to?
I'm about to go over that.
Okay.
So yes, another sheet for everybody. So we were able to crunch numbers and do like a breakdown for everybody, and I'll wait till they get it handed out so we can go through it together. Okay, so at the top there, you can see I have handgun with RDS. This is the gun itself with the red dot optic. So it comes together once you purchase the gun. The price for the gun and optic is $812. We're asking for 14 guns. So with full-time and part-time currently, we have 13 officers, right? Which would give us 1 spare gun, just in case something were to happen with somebody's gun. and we need a spare, then we have one, and it would be completely outfitted. And I'll go through that here in a minute. So you move down, this is the price for the light that would be mounted on the gun. We have an Amazon price there, that $154.82. So that was when we were putting this together. We had pulled up Amazon and looked at the lights for the guns. That was the going price. We checked last night and the price had gone up to $169.66. So Amazon is a great tool, but that's what we're going to be dealing with, is it fluctuating price wise. This Strikers, this is who we had purchased the 40 millimeter through, as well as our OC. I had reached out to him about the lights. He said this is with a discount, this price down here, this 162, as you can see, it's lower than the Amazon price. So there's options there for the light. The holster, moving down there, obviously with a new gun, a weapon mounted light, and the red dot sight, you're gonna need new holsters as well. So on the Blackhawk website there, you can see $149.95, and then again, Striker's price is $180. Now, I will say this, I was messing around with Blackhawk's website last night, looking at if we could purchase 14 holsters at a time, and you cannot. There are some holsters that they only have one in stock, and I don't know when they're gonna get any more. I don't know if that's just because of demand, if the models are going out, I don't know, but that's kind of the reliability of Strikers. Yes, you're gonna pay a little bit more, but we're gonna get everything when we order it. So down here under total cost, I have it broken down a couple different scenarios. If you go through Amazon and Blackhawk, with the new price, with the price change, you're looking at a total of $15,000, 847 cents, or $847.02. So that price changed due to the change in the light. If we go through Strikers with the lights and holsters, you're looking at $16,000, a little over $16,000. If we do Strikers for the lights and Blackhawk holsters, that's gonna be your cheapest option. You're looking at $15,739. So again, this is asking for, that total cost there is asking for 14 guns completely outfitted with RDS, lights, and holsters. Now, if you come down here to the bottom, obviously we would like, Officer Furman and I, after going to this training, one of the big things was train more with your department. That's something we would love to do here. So with that in mind, we would like to do 4 firearm trainings annually. One of those would probably be a qualification, so just qualifying with the handgun, shotgun, and rifle. So we would be asking for approximately 3,000 practice rounds. This is just a price breakdown compared to the 40 caliber. You're looking at that $909. Going to the 9 millimeter, you're looking at the $662
And that's per year,
per year. And
3,000 rounds.
And we have it marked here that the price will change in February of this year as well. So when you put everything together, we believe it's probably the best to go through Strikers just because you'll get everything when you order it. With going through Strikers and the cost of ammo for the practice rounds, you're looking at a total cost of $16,902.
I think there's some, trade-in value for your weapon if you want to trade it, that kind of offsets some of the expense.
Yes, I believe Keisler, is who we go through with our weapons and ammunition. I do believe that they will offer a buyback. I'm not sure what that is. Some departments it's $250, some it's $300. But that gives the opportunity for the officer to buy their duty weapon and have it as their own. And that offsets that cost of that gun of that $812. You know, depending on what the buyback price is, it offsets that for each individual officer to buy their gun. If they choose not to, that's fine too. But they do offer that option.
So there is an option out there
Yes.
for, to get through, whether the officer buys it or we trade it in, you're gonna get some money back for that gun, which will go towards the purchase of the new equipment.
Yes.
Do you guys have any questions about that? Is there anything we could answer for you guys if you have any questions?
Are these still the Glock?
Yes, yep. Yep, everything we could find online is the Glock is by far the most reliable, easy maintenance. There's videos out there of them dropping them out of airplanes and that still shoot, so.
I don't have a question, but you know about the rule with them, right?
What's that?
If you guys get new guns, we get to break them in first.
That's fine, we can run you through a qual quick.
Sounds like fun.
If I could chime in for a second. So when the whole idea of going from 40 calibers to 9 millimeters was brought up, and that was right around the time I took over as chief about 5 years ago, when the sheriff's office was transitioning, I think Waterloo was. And essentially at that time, the only thing they could really tell me was the benefit was how much it cost per round. And I could understand for a larger department like Waterloo or a county, that might make sense, but for us, you know, the amount of weapons we have are pretty minimal, and I just didn't see there being a significant savings for us, so I didn't see spending the money to get new guns just for a little bit of savings on some rounds. Since then, these guys went to their training and came back and won me over. The accuracy and the ability with the statistics that they provided and the ability to put the officer in the best position to win the fight if they have to, is the most important thing to me. And then secondly, there can be a significant savings. So I think couple the two together, and I was won over, and they were kind of surprised too, because I was like, no, I'm not doing this, and especially when you come to me and you say, well, your gun is 8 or 10 years old, and I'm like, you're telling me a gun expires? You know, but it does. I mean, to some degree, when you think about the wear and tear on it, and the elements that it's exposed to on a regular basis. So I think that what they're telling us is important. I think it, of course, we want our officers to be in the best position they can be in if they find themselves in that position where they have to make that decision. We want them to win the fight. So I think by all means, I think that's the best way to go.
Jordan, you had listed on here price on ammo changes, and of course, it's never gonna go down. Do we know what the government pricing change is for this year?
I don't yet. This Keisler Police Supply is the company that I go through, or that I've made contact with, that we've gone through in the past. Their contract date ends February 28th of this year,
Okay,
so I don't know what they're,
being renegotiated?
yeah.
Yep, okay.
And not to say that, you know, Evansdale is a very small town, but I'm sure you guys, maybe some of you remember, there was a shooting right across, on Grand, right across from Tom Nichols' place a few years back. Officer Van Kolk and I were actually working that night. I was in the prime position, just in the right spot at the right time, to where I was able to get behind one of the cars that was leaving the scene. At that time, all I know was a speeding car away from the scene of a shooting, where we ended up collecting, 19 shell casings or something like that. It was a significant amount. Was one time where I ended up chasing the car, got the car ended up crashing into a ditch. And I had to chase this person with my gun and my light at that time. Officer Womachill had a similar situation. I'll let him explain it to you.
Yeah, it was not as significant as that, but it was a police pursuit, so I was pursuing a vehicle. About, I want to say, 5 occupants exited the vehicle. I chased the driver on foot. I was able to locate that driver, obviously, given the circumstances. They were doing, I want to say, right around like 110 down Dubuque Road. So, you know, it's, I don't know what I'm going into. A lot of times we don't know what we're going into. So a foot pursuit ensued. I was able to get this guy at gunpoint. At that point in time, I did not have a flashlight because my flashlight was still in the vehicle. Everything happens very fast and quick, and sometimes you don't think to grab the flashlight. So, you know, it was very dark. He was wearing black, so I couldn't see him. But, you know, in Officer Furman's incident, the guy did have a gun. There was a firearm found in the area where I took this guy into custody. So, you know, high stakes, extreme circumstances. You know, we just from those experiences, and I'm sure everybody's got their own, that you're just hearing from our experiences, that weapon-mounted light is gonna make a huge difference for safety reasons, especially with our officers.
Is that just like a pressure
Yes.
switch or something like that?
Yep,
it's
yep,
using?
so like
Okay.
your support hand on your handgun, there's a switch there, and you can either flip it on, or you can just hold it, so you can, manipulate that. Is there any other questions I can answer before I close this out? Nope.
Yes.
Yes,
How many firearm training days do we currently offer our staff?
right now, one,
Okay.
and that's something that we're,
That's a problem.
yep. So that is, and that comes back to the ammo aspect. Obviously, you know, we're in need of new firearms. With going to 9mm, yes, you're gonna spend some money. You're gonna have to spend money regardless at some point in time to purchase new weapons. But if we go to 9mm, it makes that training more feasible and likely to happen and be able to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Who are currently the certified firearms instructors now in the department?
it would be myself, Officer Furman, Dan Taylor, and then part-time Officer Skinner. Tom
Okay,
Skinner.
I was gonna say, is Tom still around?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So, all right, if there's no more questions, I'm gonna close this out here. Pretty good?
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, officers.
yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
just,
I know, he's
I got a closing statement.
Oh, you closing statement.
Yep.
Okay.
So, in closing, Officer Furman and I believe that 9mm RDS and lights would greatly benefit our city, the police department, and our citizens. Ultimately, citizens would be safer, officers would be safer, and the city would be less liable and save money. Officers would be more accurate in shot placement and allow for more firearms training as a department. We as police officers are the line between law and order and chaos in society. We have been fortunate as a department to not have an officer-involved shooting. To say that it can't or will not happen is not realistic. Shall we be faced with that reality, we believe with the items proposed, it'll put our officers in the best position to win the fight, to keep order and peace, and to protect life and property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I was gonna have Stephanie here tonight. She was gonna talk a little bit about, the knowledge she has regarding grants. I kind of already touched on the COPS grant. I believe there's some GTSB money out there that, we're gonna be utilizing for radars. I think we've got one this year so far, and, possibly doing two next year out of GTSB funds. I think they allocate roughly $4,000 for that, and we can spend up to $2,000 of that money for each unit. So there would be a small contribution from the city. That's really all I got on that. Oh, I'm sorry, body cams. I think she was talking about grant that opens up with the aisle, and a grant that opens up with the Guernsey Foundation. So we could get some funds from both of those to help us towards our body cam needs.
I actually asked her to reach out to Blackhawk Gaming because they've went away from supplying equipment to fire and police departments.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's not their forte
Okay. I wasn't aware
anymore,
of that.
because they believe that the city should be able to purchase that. It's more extracurricular activities.
Okay.
I'm a city, but I asked her to reach out to either Holly or Emily, and
Sure. And I think you have the paperwork on the COPS grant?
I do.
Okay. So if you're interested at looking at that.
Yep, I could send that out.
I
to
think
all of
Ben's
you.
gonna talk a little bit about training.
Chief, just on the grants, and I guess for anybody that knows, do they do grants for firearms or anything like that would help?
That's a good question. Stephanie's great at looking that stuff
That
up,
one in?
so
Okay.
we'll task her with that.
All right.
I just want to talk a couple of things. Hold on one second, I get my water.
You just started, Ben.
It'll be quick. I just want to talk a little bit about our training budget. As you can see, it's pretty much depleted for this year. In the past, we haven't been a department that has we've done the minimal training for the most part. I came in a sergeant and kind of was tasked with training. I'm trying to turn that around to get us to the other end of the spectrum where everybody feels confident and that they can perform their duties. So I'm really unsure of a number to like request for a training budget, but I'll just give you a list of a few things that I foresee coming up in the future here for training. And one of those is firearms training, like they had discussed. I'd like to send somebody to alert training. That's down in Texas. That's for active shooter. It's basically what every police department across the country is going to, whether it be school, whether it be commercial business. Officer Skinner is actually an instructor for that. So if we can't get somebody down there, I want to get somebody as an instructor. But if we can't do that, I would like for Skinner to spend a couple days with us to get us up to speed.
Can you tell them a little bit about what alert is?
Yeah, so basically it's just what they've done, the DOJ, federal government, and these departments in Texas, and I have no idea really the history of that is why they picked Texas, but they've taken every mass shooting and they basically dissect it from the second the call comes out to the second that somebody's either convicted or if they've taken their own life, I mean, to the end. And that's all, everything from how officers respond to parking. When you show up there, all the law enforcement that shows up can create a situation just where they park their cars. So they break this down. I mean, it's very intense training. There's just a lot that goes into it. And I think it would benefit our department quite a bit. Another focus for the year I would like to see is defensive tactics training. I'd like to be able to pick an officer who would want to kind of take that as their forte and kind of run with that. I don't know if all of you know, but Stephanie and Officer Vanderkolk are child safety seat instructors, or what's that? Okay, so they can do child safety seat inspections and help new parents or even old parents make sure that they're safety seats. We kind of want to do some more stuff with that with the community. And when we hired Officer French, we were fortunate enough that he brought along what's called a DRE program with him. He's certified as an instructor or an expert, I guess. It's a drug recognition expert. So he's kind of come in and shown us a little bit more light on not just drunk driving, but just impaired driving. So any kind of narcotics, medicine that you're prescribed that you're not taking like you should or shouldn't be driving. So that's another kind of aspect of training I'd like to get for him to train the rest of us to kind of be advanced in that just a little bit more. So as far as like training goes with our department, every department's a little bit different. Our department, I basically see it as 3 tiers. And first tier would be like off-site. So that would be like those guys going to firearms instructor school. There's different instructors for that. It's focus-driven, whatever topic that you're going to touch on. And then there's outside department training. We do participate in that with the sheriff's office mostly. And then there's in-house training. The outside department training, and by no means on the record, nothing wrong with the sheriff's office training. They have, excellent instructors. But some of the issues that we run into with training with them is when we go train with them, they have a lot of in-house stuff that they have. I mean, they're dealing with a couple hundred employees, so they have a lot of HR stuff, scheduling stuff, and there's a lot of our officers, when we send them to these trainings, they're on overtime. And I don't wanna pay them to listen to Blackhawk County HR stuff and, jail stuff, like intake and all this other stuff. They need it, we don't, so it kinda puts us in a little predicament with that. That training's always held on a Wednesday because every one of their officers work on a Wednesday. So, and then there's, the third tier would be like in-house training. And talking with all the officers, that's the preferred, because we get to train with each other, we get to stay focused on what there's nothing outside as to what we're, intake stuff and all that stuff that we don't need to know. But also that comes at an expense with overtime also, because we're calling everybody in for, we usually been trying to just do 4-hour blocks of it to, nobody likes being there for 8 hours. So we like to do 4-hour blocks, get in, get our training done, and then leave for the day.
We also try to utilize computer-based training.
Yeah, so like a lot of,
We can do that during their shift.
yeah, so a lot of that is what's required by the state, which is, implicit bias, mental health, bloodborne pathogens. I don't have anybody do that for overtime anymore, because there's online, it costs like $10 through the academy, or the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy to do that. So I'm just having them do that stuff online, unless I can send them there. It's basically the first shifters that are going to the sheriff's office for that stuff, but the other thing I'd like to kind of talk about, if I can hold my voice on here, is kind of what Justin was talking about, with having what we consider like a 9th officer. That was brought up to me here, a while back, and my initial thought was, do we need it? Does it help our department? Does it help the city? Because we've been going through what we have now for quite some time. So I looked in and I started looking into some different things, talking to some people. And I'm fully aware of the cost to the city, like you said, like the overtime issue. Like it doesn't, if you look at it just under that perspective, it doesn't justify just the overtime, obviously. I got a couple handouts here. I think there's enough there if you want to pass those over. So what this is just a random schedule. It doesn't really matter on the dates. So these are the benefits that I've kind of come up with for a 9th officer for our department. Right now, as we sit, we have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have 57 hours of the 72 hours that are single man coverage on the weekends, which is 79%, just over 79%. With the 9th officer, as you can see on here, so these shifts, this is what I came up with would be the best possible shift, or best possible scenario that I know of at this point. These shifts would be, the 8th officer, which is gonna be under Brandon French right now, and the 9th officer would be, permanent shifts. So they're not gonna rotate like the rest of us. So that would give 7 days of coverage of having a second officer on second shift. And does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So that would switch it to basically only 28 hours versus the 57 hours. So it basically will flip that, where we only have 28 hours of single-man coverage over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
If I can chime in.
Yep.
Just to put that in perspective, did you say 57 hours?
57 hours of the 72.
So over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as it sits right now, we have 57 hours where it's only being
Oh,
one
thank you.
officer covered calls in the city. And if that officer gets an arrest, an OWI arrest, he could be at the jail or at the hospital for hours, maybe the rest of his shift. And the city is sitting with no coverage whatsoever. And so, that's where the idea of having another officer, helps reduce that single man coverage down.
So, yeah. The other thing that I kind of started looking at on this, how does it help, how would it help, or could it help, our training as far as like being able to do more in-house training? And what I noticed when I put this schedule together is if you look on Thursdays, most everybody's working on Thursdays. There's a couple weeks, I don't know if it shows in the ones that you guys have, where there's only one person not working on a Thursday. That would essentially allow us to have Thursdays as our training day. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's gonna eliminate all overtime for a training day, but I feel that it would diminish that line, quite a bit. Just because everybody's there on a Thursday. Since I've been doing the schedule, I've been pretty good about getting people switched around. So if they're working third, they're not, I get them off that night and then they, so they can train that next day. Or I bump their hours back so they can go home at 10 or 11 o'clock and still get some rest before their training day. So, and I haven't heard any complaints, and maybe there is complaints, I just haven't heard them yet, but, so I think that would help our department with the trainings. And as far as being able to do more in-house training, which is what our officers would prefer, because that would give us the Thursdays where everybody's working. The other thing I'll say about this schedule, it's a fixed shift, and you'll see like, on this particular example, French is on every weekend. So what I considered doing is, after 2 months of them working that shift, they would just flip. So French then would go down and do the Monday through Thursday shift, and then the ninth officer would be over the weekends for the next 2 months. On a rotating schedule, we're averaged about 21 weekends off a month, I think. With this, they would obviously get 26, so it's a little bit of a benefit to be on that schedule. The other thing with the schedule that I started looking into is when we hired for this 8th position, it was under, I think, Mayor Foss at the time. It was kind of built to be an abusive shift, so to speak. They're moved all over the place to fill in what hours people want off, to cover for trainings, for all that stuff. So this next sheet here, I'm gonna pass this around, okay? This is an actual shift of French. And the boxes where it says 0, those are his days off. And this isn't even really a wild week. He could probably get up here and tell you his more crazier weeks, but his schedule's all over the place. And he was hired for that, and he's not complaining, he's not, I wanna be clear, he's not saying he's quitting or anything like that. He's not, as far as I know, he's happy where he's at. But there is something that we didn't really think about when we hired that position, and that's the human element, to just having such a scattered shift that you never know what day you have off. His particular situation, he has a family at home. I mean, he never has the same days off generally, unless nobody's taking time off, which lately that hasn't been the case. And it's not gonna be the case, because we got 3 babies coming, so things are gonna get wild. But anyways, so there is a human element to the schedule that we have now. There's, potentially a retirement coming up in a few years, and in theory, he would move up out of that and somebody else would get in there. But at that point, I mean, that position's a pretty young position, and they might have to work that position for a long time. And it's hard to expect somebody just to be kind of on the whim of their work schedule for a long period of time. So, and I mean, everybody that's worked that position, we told them, you know, this position's abusive. It's when we need you to work, you're gonna be working it. And they've all agreed to it. And by no means am I saying that anybody is suggesting otherwise at this point. But I think it's important to consider the human element to work in a schedule like that. And so the 9th and the 8th, the other benefit to them, having those two positions the way they are, is they would still kind of be a little bit of an abusive shift. Whereas if somebody took a night off, one of the other officers, they would slide into that position, so it wouldn't create any overtime. So if somebody took a third shift off, that person, whatever day it was, or whatever day they're working, they would just move up to that shift then and cover that shift. Now, obviously, that gets us back to single person coverage for those hours during that shift, but that's just, you know, the way it goes if you have that. So, but at least their schedule would be fixed. They would know what days they work, and they would know what days they have off, so they can schedule things on for their families and stuff they have to do outside of work. I proposed this to pretty much all the officers, and I thought it was funny, the first response I got out of most of all of them is like, well, we're never gonna get overtime. And I thought that was kind of a funny response when I showed them the schedule, because they can see that basically that position would eliminate, not all the overtime, I'll never say that in this profession, but it would certainly eliminate a lot of that shift coverage overtime, and it would not get rid of it, but it would definitely help that line item. That's all I have for that. Does anybody have any questions on training or anything I discussed with the ninth officer?
Just more focus, and you touched on it a little bit, that was the computer training, but this has come up. I can make arguments on both sides, because I'm not looking to get us too much into the whole community, what was the advocate person that came across, I don't wanna go that, but I know mental health, even in my background with the MS, has changed, and for example, specifically helping people in mental health crisis, do they have a focus program more than the computer training that
They
has
do.
ever come up?
They have a program that the Sheriff's Office, Waterloo PD, and people from the Crisis Center. I don't even know what their title is. It's, I went through it, what is it? Elevate. So they do have that. You can call these guys out, and they will come out and assist us with somebody that's going through a mental crisis. And it's not always the number one goal, but it's to keep them out of the hospital. I mean, you kind of understand that more than probably anybody in the room, but to keep them out of the hospital, so there's other options for them. But as far as training goes, I think you went to that training, the Solutions Point. You guys both went to it, right? What was the name of it, do you remember? CIT training, so critical incident training. I went through it also. It's a 40-hour training. It's probably some of the better training I've had in a long time. There's two cops that retired and created this company that are out of San Antonio, and there's a whole story with that. But anyways, they pushed this training out, and it's great training. It's much better than what you get off of the online stuff. Unfortunately, the online stuff, that's checking boxes. That's basically what it's doing.
Minimum criteria.
The academy says, hey, this will meet that requirement. So if you go ahead and do this online training, we can check the box that you've been trained for the year. By no means is that sufficient training. For instance, they have police police vehicle operations on there, cause you gotta do training for that. Like, I haven't actually went through it yet, but I can't imagine what you learn watching a video about police vehicle operations other than being in the vehicle and actually practicing your skills. So, but that's basically a way for departments to check that box. But that's what I kind of alluded to begin with is I'm trying to get us from down here on training and get us up here where everybody feels a lot more confident in what their ability is and what the options are that we can use, no matter what that training is, so.
Okay. Yeah, because I certainly don't want to take away from anything firearms, defensive tactics, drug recognition, de-escalations and all that.
Yeah, like,
I just know the mental
yeah.
health is such a huge topic, and
Oh, yeah.
specifically the one I know that just simply surprised me, that there's a huge focus in healthcare that they changed on them, was like specifically excited delirium, and how much, and absolutely not saying this has ever happened in the city of Evansdale. I have not been ever made aware of it, but big cities, how much a law enforcement initial call for service turned out very, very badly, and it was truly more of a medical emergency is what they're calling it, and things like that. So
Yeah.
I just know that's a key topic, and I'm sure that's something, especially with our community, our citizens and neighbors, that's a big case. As much as we want you to make sure you guys can protect yourself, that's always something I would support, is also being able to help our neighbors if they're in a crisis that seems like,
Right,
you know, they're just being belligerent.
yep. Yep, and that's what that Elevate helps us do too.
Okay.
It kinda takes the uniform out of the situation. We're still there for safety, but we just kinda back in the shadows, so to speak. And these guys and gals are trained to go up there and deal with these people that are in crisis, to try to lower the temperature a little bit, so everybody leaves there the way they came, so to speak, so. Any other questions for me? Nope. Thanks for letting me use your desk there. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sergeant Newman.
Thank you.
Oh, we only got about an hour and a half left. Now, that kind of concludes, what we really had. We just kind of wanted to present some of our, wants versus needs type list, and, you know, be here for any questions you might have, so. Anything
Thank you.
else?
Just real quick, so we're not budgeted to be, let me just make sure. We're not budgeted to be replacing a squad car this year on.
We are.
Okay,
Yeah, no, it is in there, actually. Towards the bottom of the page.
right.
Yeah.
Well, for the year that we're currently in, or the year that we're budgeting for right
Would start July of '25.
now? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And what was discussed is that he said that he could go without if it helped something else along.
Yeah.
I just wondered how feasible that is. I don't know if we wait, you know, and keep you in bad equipment. I don't know. I'm just wondering if we can actually wait.
I guess the caveat to that was that, I think we would obviously have to probably increase our maintenance, line item,
Yeah.
because, you know, we'd be, spreading that usage across less vehicles, so.
And Chief, correct me, but if I have my math correct, if we're mainlining a fleet of 4 every 2, the oldest vehicle should be about 8 years when it goes out of service. Is that correct?
I'll trust your math.
Okay.
Sounds
Just in
about
case that
right,
helps.
yeah.
So, I mean, we're
Yeah.
cycling 8 years on a hard vehicle.
Okay, that's it.
Again, I'm happy to take a vehicle this year. We're glad to have one, but that was just, something I threw out, so.
Another truck or Explorer?
Explorer.
Yeah, we've talked about the Explorers.
Okay, and not a sedan.
Probably something similar to what we have now. Yeah, it's probably had the least amount of issues, so.
Cybertruck.
I mean, I would imagine.
Right.
I would imagine. I mean, you see the Explorers in almost every fleet now.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to throw Dodge under the bus, but we just have not had good luck.
Yeah, they got some power. That's
Yeah.
for sure. But
So would you rather have guns this year as opposed to a new vehicle?
I'd have to take a poll with these guys. Honestly, it doesn't really matter to me, but, I'm not sure what they feel.
They'd probably rather have the guns, I think. Guns would probably be more And also, the other thing that these guys didn't touch on is our inventory right now, as far as our 40 caliber stuff, is pretty low. We didn't order it because we knew this conversation was gonna come up, and so we don't have a lot to dispose of or try to sell off to whoever or whatever, but, so, isn't that correct on that? Yeah, so,
So that would make sense if we were gonna transition, now would be a good time to do it, since we're at a point where we would wanna re-up our ammunition at some point here in the near future.
Thank you. That's a lot of information.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I was gonna say, I will just say I appreciate the time and effort putting it all together.
You bet.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very well put together.
I think we'll just go over the fire department and then call it a day. Okay,
Bring it
do you
on,
wanna come
Ryan.
up though and just kinda,
Bring, we'll plug in the PowerPoint, you can get your little laser pointer.
He was gonna bring Tinker Toys, no?
hey Ryan, don't you just do this part-time? These are all full-time officers, sergeant and chiefs, so.
He was working on it all day yesterday, I saw him.
Just playing.
You were at the station all day yesterday.
We won't call you a slacker.
But, you know, just a little bit talking about pretty much the wages and everything and stay the same for the fire department. Your EMT full-time is just 3% increase. That's kind of what we did over the board for city employees that were non-union. It had been mentioned by a council member, we haven't increased the volunteers' pay. We did Ryan's last year. The, you know, assistant captain, you know, assistant chief and the fire captains, though that rate hasn't been increased. We did, the last increase we did was 21. And that was just minimal, $1, right? Yeah. So, but go ahead and talk about what's near and dear to your heart. I think there's 2 items that stand out most.
Yeah. About the only thing be ambulance, which is overdue. How old was the one? 2002, 2003?
2002.
Yeah, I was gonna
Okay.
say early 2000s.
Normally we did those about every 15 years. So that's kind of, we've had a lot of maintenance issues with them here in the last about 2-3 years, so. And right now they're about 2 to 3 years out for a build. So that's kind of one of the main things there, and increasing the safety clothing. Our gear is coming up to the 10-year mark again. And that's what the NFPA says, 10 years, and gear's technically done for. So, we bought some 8 years ago, so. we're kinda
Did the last time that we replaced it, did we only replace a share? Was it just 7 sets?
Yeah, 7 or 8, whatever it was.
Okay.
So. That's really, in a gist. And I think we'll have to move the UTV money over too. We won't have it this fiscal year,
Oh, because
So-
of the,
cause they gotta build it yet. That's about
And
6
what-
months,
oh, is it 6 months? Okay.
last I checked anyway, so. That's it in a
I
gist.
didn't consider for that build.
Well,
So,
it's what we had budgeted this year, so we just have to
yeah,
sign it into reserves and
yeah,
Yeah.
back out again.
yeah. We initially, just a little bit of history on that, we initially were gonna go with, one, like a grant source for that, and that wasn't, they weren't receptive to that, so they're kinda like, you can apply if you want, but, I didn't wanna risk that resource for that and then get denied and kinda have that, you know, as our application for this year. Long story short, there's a couple other grant sources out there that we're gonna check into. So we can move that forward, but thank you for mentioning it was just 6 months, so,
Do you expect to see any savings in internet costs?
no, Actually, it's a little bit more expensive, not for fire and police, because they're already paying, $158.45 a piece, so they're already paying upwards of $300. So when MetroNet comes in this spring, their expense isn't gonna go up. It's actually gonna be a little bit less. But as far as like City Hall and, Chris is just gonna be like maybe $50 more a month for Public Works. And then, of course, for the wastewater treatment plant, which we need fiber there, so. Most of the stuff is, it's either the same or it's just a slight increase to allow for, economical, increasing. Is there any questions that you had with any of the things that we have budgeted for fire?
I don't have anything.
Not really.
Positioning for that ambulance is the big ticket.
Yeah, that is, and we talked earlier about, setting aside the money in a different kind of fund that's gonna grow some interest to help offset some of those costs.
So at what point do we pull the trigger and
Well,
order that thing?
we have one more quote that's gonna be coming in.
Yeah, they just come last Thursday.
Okay, so once that quote comes in, we've already received a quote from the other manufacturer that we visited, actually. I don't wanna mention any names.
We're just getting an updated one from them.
Yep, getting an updated one from them, and then once we receive that quote, it's actually gonna be on the agenda to move forward.
Okay.
Cause
Yeah,
it's past time.
If 15 years is useful life, and we're already at, what, 22, 23?
Are you kinda worried?
I'd like to get acting sooner rather than later.
Yeah, we've definitely, I mean, and we've
even thought
been
about
as
that.
practical as can be, I'd say, in the past. I think the red one that was sitting down was another demo that kind of set, so I mean, we always are, looking for ways to kind of help discount or something on them and whatnot. Same thing we've offered here. But we've definitely gotten the life out of them.
And we are still able to sell it and get that money back. I know you're not gonna get much out of the used thing. It's gonna become a,
I was just gonna say, yeah.
tailgating thing or something like that,
What
but
did
yeah.
the vendor here in the state say for aftermarket on them? It had dropped quite a bit, hadn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I would approach it as not expecting to get anything, and even if we get a few dollars, that's a win.
Or it'd be good
over
for the
it.
PD to make for their trainings with their weapons.
We tried that a few years ago.
I know, we just give you guys another one. This one's better shape though.
You can almost stand up in it.
We were gonna try to put together a SWAT group, a SWAT team, but, the interest just kind of fell off.
Yeah, otherwise that was good.
Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Appreciate it, Ryan.
Nice job.
As far as building inspection, we kind of talked about that already. Steve's wages are based on 65% of what we're charging for building permits, so if we're expecting to bring in 80 grand for building permits, he's gonna be around 52,000. Any questions as far as building inspection goes? It's pretty simple.
Other than I know that building permits obviously is up because of the development, but something just that I would like to put in the counselors that has come up from the past is if that becomes more of a regular thing, that's 52,000 for a part-time person. So when do we put somebody on staff? Again, that's a higher year, but as we watch that trend, just something to keep an eye on.
Yep.
Animal control, just a slight increase, from 78.75 to 81.11. Chris, did you have any input on the animal control budget at all? We did some, I guess we didn't do any increases. We just did an increase like for $300 in other supplies. As you can see, we're already at 832 for this year. Other health and social services, that's just the standard. We did get a request from Operation Threshold to support them again in this next fiscal year. Met Transit, and we'll be approving all that. Volunteer Center of Cedar Falls, that just helps with the volunteer appreciation program that we're involved in. That's the end of public safety, and I think that's what was our goal this evening.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, just especially so that's on the tape again, just cover what benefit, a taxpayer looks at Operation Threshold, they may have no idea what that is and what we're spending $2,500 on. I know we were talking about those community programs and things.
Yeah.
Could you give us just a 30-second overview of those so that it's out again?
Sure. I don't actually have the figures with me, I don't think. Operation Threshold actually breaks it down to what we give them.
I was just talking more what they do.
Oh,
just,
okay.
Their title doesn't tell them much as
No,
far as
it
what
doesn't.
what their
So
their
they
service is.
they support individuals in the Evansdale area with heating assistance, electric assistance, water assistance too. Maybe not so much anymore.
Rarely.
They have, according to their statistics, they have helped people replace furnaces in the area. They're just all over support for the lower income people that we may have in our city.
Yeah, so just another outlet for,
Yes.
especially, inflation and things have not been kind to anybody.
Right.
This is another outlet that the city has, that our taxpayers as a whole have
Yeah.
helped fund to help those
Yeah.
seeking some additional options for, for need.
Yes.
It was a program that I think you started back up, right?
Yes.
We had been out of it for a while
Yeah,
and
they,
we elected to
I
go back into it.
And again, I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but they did a lot last year for our city.
Yep, so, and anything that we
It
can do
was like
as a
to the
whole-
tunes of 145,000.
Cool.
So our 2,500 is just a drop in the bucket.
Yep. And it's helping out our community, helping out
Yeah.
our neighbors, so.
Yep. Well, if nothing else this evening, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I had something for building inspection, and I